Okay, what I want to talk to you about today is InDesign. And it's really important to understand the before industry of InDesign. Actually, before InDesign was created, there was a page maker, which was created by Aldus, and a company called Quark, so Quark Express, designed programs that emulated and mimicked what would happen prior to the computer, which is a standard paste up. So imagine having a bunch of these boards all around the office and having to cut them to whatever size your page size is. So this is a brochure. That would have been a trifold. And I collected a couple of examples of these traditional paste ups from someone who was kind of closing their business several years ago. So I'd have an example for you today. All right, so think about the craft that you would have to have in doing this board, right? And covering it up so that it's nice and clean. All of the materials, the physical materials that you would have, the hand skills that you needed to have. So, for example, here are the written instructions to the printer on what needed to happen here. Now in InDesign, as a frame-based program, I'm just going to draw a box and tell it what color it is. It's a magical thing that's saving like hours and hours of my time as a designer to do this paste up and all the instructions, and then the person at the printer who's putting all this together. So that position was called the stripper. And what that means is they literally stripped the pieces of film together so that they could have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black plates and or solid color. So if you watch my video about colors, I like to talk about colors in relationship to things that we know. So if you want to paint your room, for example, you're going to go to a hardware paint supply store. And with that, you're going to get a swatch, and then they're going to make a paint can. That's what Pantone is. So if we look at the instructions here, you can see that down here, these are Pantone swatches. So Pantone is the industry standard, and it's a matching system. So you can be guaranteed that every single time you get a can of that paint, it's going to always be the same color ink. So they would also have this material called rubylith or amberlith. So amber, orange, ruby is a little bit more red than this. So I would have to cut out, see, the square. That would be a different color. And then on another sheet of entire acetate that is the whole width of this, right? I have another square. So in InDesign, all I have to do is create my whole entire composition in one document, and I don't have to worry about this. The computer is going to separate it all. But let's look at this. Registration marks to be able to tell the printer where all of this is aligned. I have my color instructions, so I have this color layer, right? It's long. There's another section here. Got my type, and then this would be a color with type in there. Now, in order to do that, this is a smooth, you can kind of see that it's white. I would have to hire a typesetter. So I would have to tell them the copy, the instructions, maybe it's upper and lowercase, which is where the term U and LC comes from, or just uppercase in this example. Then I want to tell them what typeface it is, the size, the leading, and in this case, there's spacing or kerning, okay? I also need to tell them what the width of my column is going to be so that they can design the type in that. So you order the typesetting, and then it would come back on this slick photographic piece of paper, and then you would cut that out and glue it on. And in the case of the board itself, it would be waxed on here. So you can see that this is a separate piece, right? Okay, along with these. That's telling the printer where this goes in the placement of my page. So basically what InDesign is doing is all of this into a digital document. I don't have to tell a typesetter and wait days for them with all their other jobs to typeset that for that column width, that typeface. that leading, and then I physically have to glue it. So the computer has revolutionized the amount of time it takes to produce all of these things. It also changed the handcraft and the materials, right? So I don't have to have all of these boards and all of this physical material to be, around an office. And we don't have to store this kind of thing. You don't have to purchase this. You just have the computer program. And what's fantastic about the program of InDesign and those predecessors is that it comes with the terminology of the printer. So it understands how this needs to be composed on a final plate version. And now they have printing that is direct to press, so that you don't even have to do any of this paste up. It just burns it to a plate itself, and then the plate prints, and then they get a new plate, or that it rinses off if it's an inkjet technology. All right, so let's go look at how InDesign actually works. So I want you to remember this notion of frames, right, and layers, because the instructions that I have to have in order to create this one brochure document is simplified. But considering that InDesign, I like to say it's a frame-based program. So let's go over there and look at how. Okay, here we are in InDesign, and I'm going to review the program before we get into designing your process book and your brand manual. So as all of the programs have the menu bar at the top, let's get started there. So we're going to do File New, all right? So under InDesign, preferences is something that you want to consider, because the program in particular will come in a different appearance. So you might be seeing your program a little bit darker. So don't be forced into working in a space that maybe isn't as comfortable as you think you'd like it to be. So for me, I prefer the lighter, just because I want to be able to see what's on the edge of my page. The other thing that you want to look for in the preferences, under general, most of these defaults are fine. The units and increments may be defaulted to picas, which is a standardized printing measurement. So go ahead and change that there. And you might want to do that before you start opening or making a new document. Grids, and you can change the color of these, elements that help you with your organizing, as well as, you can turn on your tracking changes. There's a lot of things that are kind of in the program itself. Okay, so thinking about the file, everything that has to do with the file. So it's opening, saving, exporting. We're going to do new document. Book is not usually something that you're going to need on a regular basis, and library basically is a storage space. So if you have a lot of items that are going to be used all the time, logos, graphics, anything that you know that you want to have at your fingertips, then you can also create a new library. But a document is going to give you your pages. So I'm going to show you a simple 8.5 by 11 standard size in the US format. However, it will, the way that the interface works now, they have customized elements here, things that I've already saved in the past, print documents with lots of templates, okay? And for example, here's one that is a, related to design history, or, create your own web, so that those are customizable standard sizes that you don't have to look them up, as well as mobile devices. So InDesign and Adobe has done a really great job of starting to add a lot of custom features like this similar to some of the other programs that are out there, but we're going to do print here. And oh, the other thing I want you to notice when you're switching this over is, print. Notice the dimensions here. Okay. When I switch over to web, it changes to pixels, so it's automatically helping you with your proper dimensions and the terminology and the units that you're supposed to be using. Okay, so I'm going to use a print, and I can change my orientation here. So this is the next step. You can decide now how many pages you need. You can add more or take them away. So say you start with 12 and you need to make 20, for example. You can add those later. Your choices here are your orientation as well as facing pages. So facing pages is going to be a default automatic. The other option is not facing pages. So I'm going to explain the difference between the two. Now, if you're creating documents that you don't care whether they're facing pages or not, and no one's going to really be evaluating the way that you're setting your files up, don't worry about facing pages, because once you export your file into a PDF, for example, you have the option of making them facing as like a reader, like a magazine spread, or not facing. So you could create a facing pages working document and export it as single pages. So that could save some stress if you're not paying attention to that. In addition, I don't have to put my page count here. I can add later. It's just a convenience. So I'm going to do 12 for now. And then this is also helping with organization right off the bat, so that you don't have to change what you're doing. So columns is a organizational structure. It basically is going to give you guidelines. These are not things that print. They're just organizing. So I think columns is really good for you if you're doing page layout for multiple pages. And this is the space between them. So the smaller you go, or the bigger you go, it depends on how wide your page is. But we'll talk about that once we get into the content. The default for margins is 1/2 inch. You might want to change that. That might be too big. So if your page size is 7, for example, and you're doing a square 7 by 7, margins would be 6 inches of live area. So you can change that here, or you can change it in the document. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create this, and we're going to look at what happens. There's my first page, and if I look at my pages palette, which I'm just going to pop out here so we can see it better, is the reader spreads all created for me. This area is my guidelines, and I created 4 columns. This is just for organizing. Grids are a way to structure your information, right? So you don't have to go only in that space, but it provides you with the options, right? You could do something all the way, 3 columns, 2 columns, 1 column, so on and so forth, okay? This is for any sort of content. So let's first talk about the page layout, and then I'm going to talk about the menus, okay? So pages, as I showed you on the board, I want you to think about how the print production influenced this program. So these are what's called reader's spreads. It means that when you're opening up your magazine, this is a left-hand side and that is a right-hand side. Odd numbers are always on the right, and therefore even numbers are always on the left. What this does, this program, is amazing because page 1 and 12 actually need to be printed together. Page 2 and 11 for example. So if you are doing what's called signatures in large documents, up to 64 or 120 something pages, this document, the way that the program works is it will submit to the printer an ability for them to reorganize and put the content in what's called printer's spreads. So if you can understand that the premise of this whole program is for the print industry, and just know that it's being created to make it user friendly, that's kind of where this is coming from. The other element that you see here is the letter A, and you'll notice up here that there's an A master. The none is no facing pages. I can make more than one master page, and what this does is it helps me with organizing. So for example, maybe I have some pages that I need different columns, or I want to put page numbers, anything that is going to be created automatically on every single page that can't be moved. It's color bar, it's a logo, it's a footnote, something like that. That's what the master pages are. So when you're wondering what that little A is, it is ideally just telling you that there could be something, content, that is repeated on every page. The most interesting one, I think, is the automated page numbers. Okay, so let's look at the rest of the menus for a minute here. So edit is going to be editing. Anything to do with cut, copy, pasting, duplicating, selecting. And what's really great here is there's a find change and a spelling. So you can check all of your spelling before you finish your document. You can also change, for example, all of the Mr., whatever the content is, you need to edit it, right? So if it says Mr. Jones and it's supposed to be Mrs. Jones, you can search for all the Mr. and change it to Mrs. So it'll automatically do all of that for you. So this is why this is a really wonderful program if you're working with a lot of text-heavy content rather than Adobe Illustrator, which is more for the art boards and kind of assembling information. Layout is going to be one place. There are other places where you can do this, but this is where you can change your margins and columns, and you can add, you can kind of organize and navigate through the document. But I'm going to show you another place where you can navigate, and that is going to be down here. So down at the bottom, you can navigate through your document by clicking on this, and you can go through them like that. You can also click this way and go to the end and go to the beginning. So that's an easy access if you don't want to be looking at the the little graphic elements. If you need to hide this in and drop it into this bank over here because you're working in other spaces, you can just go down to the bottom. The next element here is type. Type has everything to do with type. However, when I'm in the type tool, you'll see that the top bar also includes most of my type content. This is a working file that the way that the interface works, you can change. So right now I'm using essentials. You can switch between typography, interactive, and I encourage you to look at each one of those and how they are set up. And then if you want to create your own workspace, you can do that. If this area here, I've noticed, is really thick and heavy on the PC version, you might want to go in and manage your workspace so that it is smaller than that, because it seems to take up a lot of space from your work area. All right, the next element is object. Okay, so similar to Illustrator, we have objects, but most of the times you're going to be thinking about how the type wraps around the object. So this is the important thing that I'll come back to, is a little bit more advanced, the text frame options. So if you have a picture, this picture, and you have type that you want to wrap around it, then that is under object, okay? Tables, creating tables, pretty self-explanatory. View is the way that you're viewing your content. Now, if you cannot remember or you don't have the keyboard with the proper identification for your command, this is the zoom in and zoom out. However, it makes it really inefficient if you're constantly having to go up to the menu bar. So I would encourage you to get used to using your left hand to do these, or your, both hands here, or your right hand if you're left-handed, so you can reach your fingers across. And then this is fit in the page, fit page in window. Again, the key command is going to be more important for you. Actual size and 0, command 0, command 1, and then shift alt command is 0. Okay, you can rotate while you're working, and then these are kind of like the viewing, literally the viewing, like the screens. You also have these options here of the extras and the grids, and I'm going to talk about those in a second. Windows, these are all the other tools that the program has that live here, and once I click on one of them, it's going to pop up over in the right hand side. If you're logged in online, if you have any questions, all of the Adobe programs have a search menu, and it's really cool because it'll pop up and show you which menu bar what you're looking for. Okay, so what I want you to think about, and here are the tools, is that this is a frame-based program. So when we were looking at the paste up board, you saw the pictures, right? And then the type, and then the overlays. And imagine all of those being included in this document all together. Now this is a preview. These little lines are there for organizing. They do not print. I can change this in a couple of ways. One is down here at the bottom, I can switch between my normal, there it is, preview, bleed, slug, okay, and presentation. So preview mode hides all of that. So one of the things that might happen as you're working would be that you, for example, might draw a box, and then when you go away from it, you're like, what happened to my box? It's gone. Well, technically it is still there. So if you move your mouse around the page, you can see that these items are here. And this is what's important about the frames. Everything is in boxes. Well, why did that go away? Well, right now it is an empty fill and an empty stroke, okay? And that's important because it's just for content. It is not, at this moment, intended to have an outline or a background color, okay? So if you're noticing that there's no margins, no pink lines, no guidelines, and an empty page, make sure that you're not in preview mode, okay? So overprint preview will also give you the, when you have photographs, it'll give you a better, if they're blurry or not blurry. If sometimes they're blurry, go to the overprint preview. Okay, so you can toggle back and forth here between normal and preview. The other way to do it is notice how I'm not in the type tool. I can click the letter W back and forth. That's what I'm doing right now. Letter W back and forth between those. Okay, so that becomes an easy way to use all of the amazing guidelines and then view your document. Okay, so one of the elements here is if you are using a grid structure, this is a design component, Be careful about ending your images not in the column structure. So you want to change the size of those. Okay. Now, just like Illustrator, I can click on these objects and I can change the size. Now there's nothing in this, so it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't have a fill or anything like that. So I can rotate, I can change the size of this, and right now it's just a box. It is a box waiting for a picture, which is why it has an X through it. And if I go up to the top here, you can see that I actually rotated it. So you can also do that at the top. You can flip things around. You can flip the content upside down, or flip horizontal and vertical. And then these mathematical elements are actually really great. So maybe this picture, I know that I need actually a 4x6. Let's see what happens. It's going to be bigger than the grid, but I can tab through this and just do 4x6. And it changed this image here. Okay. The other numbers that you're going to see is where the document is sitting in the page. So the left, it is at 0.54 across, right? And 4 inches over. So if you know that you need something, if you're, this is where the brand manual gets important. You can give someone the instructions and then you can just type in the XY coordinates here. The other element that you really want to look for when you're working is, when you're selected on the black arrow, is all of this stuff here. So if this is not showing up, you want to see if you can find it in your settings. But I'm going to show you what this does before we hunt for that. This is when I put a picture inside my document, and then these are aligning the boxes. So for example, if I click on the black arrow and I drag both of these boxes, then I can align them together. Maybe I want them to be centered. Maybe I want them to be at the top. Maybe I want them to be together. Okay? And now that I've done that, I have to undo. And I'm using Command Z for that. So these are alignment tools that are really great. Now, if that is not, this bar is not showing up, go over here to your settings and you can customize the panel. So double check to make sure that these options are there. So it's probably, I think nope. Okay. So these are the things that we can see or not see. So under object is all of our text frame options and our vertical and alignment stuff. So if it's not showing up on yours, double check the settings there. Okay, so over here in our tools, we have the black arrow. Like in Illustrator, it's the object. So that is moving the solid object. The white arrow is the content. So if I had something in here, I could move the content, I can change the content, or I can change the size of the box. The next important element is type, obviously. The line tool is basically, a line. And then up here, I can control my strokes, weight, and color. I can also do that under my window, okay? And a palette will pop up for you. This is the pen tool. Works similarly to Adobe Illustrator, where you're going to create shapes. May or may not be beneficial in InDesign. If you do have something that you've already drawn in Illustrator, it's better to just import that as an image itself. But know that you can do some basic drawing here. And just like Illustrator, here's your colors, so I can flip between those. And then I can also change the color here at the top. Notice that. Okay. So you want to check out my video about colors because color works differently in each program, which is very frustrating. So it's, hard to kind of get used to that. And also just a reminder that anytime you see the dash, the crossbeam, that's none, right? Like danger, don't go there, it's empty. So there I have made a no stroke versus a black stroke or a blue stroke. Okay, so if I want a stroke, then I can adjust my stroke here, and I can also change the type of stroke. But it's not as customizable as Illustrator is in the terms of using brushes to change your strokes. So you can do a little bit of fun things with the stroke in InDesign, but it's pretty limited. That looks like it's sewn. That's kind of cool. Okay, pencil, same thing, but I'm going to draw freehand and then it's going to make a line for me. Two different types of boxes. This box is a picture, and then this box is a solid. So this box, when you do this, you'll notice that there's no X inside, and it's basically if I want to make a color, and notice that using that layer principle, that it is on top of what I drew here, right? So that's when I need to go up to my object and deal with my arrange, send to back, or bring to front. So let's place an image in here. So we're going to go to File. Now the temptation for this is to go over to my desktop or to go to Google, grab a picture, and literally grab it and drag it. That is going to not give you the proper data and image. So I want you to constantly think about, if you're going to be traveling, here's my metaphor. You have your passport and you want to copy your passport. So your passport is going to be something you're going to keep in your room because it's valuable and you don't want to lose it. But you need to carry a copy, a piece of paper that is a replication of that passport. It's lighter weight, it's durable, and you could lose it or whatever. So that is actually what is happening when you open up a document and you place it. The computer knows that my original passport is in my room. So when you think of file storage, wherever that passport is stored on my computer, that's my hotel room or whatever, right? And it's linking up to that original file that has the large content to it. Maybe it's a 2 GB file or something like that. Well, InDesign is going to make a preview. It's going to make a photocopy of it. And that is the magic of the program, because it is making it a functional, low file size so that you can use the program more quickly than you could if it was constantly rendering the high resolution. So what happens is these things link. So I'm going to place an image here. And by doing so, I'm going to either do File, Place, or Command D. Command D. You can also do this with text. Okay, so I'm going to go to coloring book. And I'm going to select one of these. Okay. Now, if you notice, it's going to give me the name of the file, and then it tells me it's a CMYK, what the file size is, and where it's living. So one of the things that's going to happen is if you start to organize and you put that folder somewhere else on your computer, this is going to give you an exclamation mark, and it's going to tell you, I don't know where that is. I need to be relinked to that. So for example, if your friend moves your passport from your suitcase to your coat or your purse or something like that, and you don't know where it is, that's the same thing as the computer. It's not gone, it's just been relocated. So that's the other element. Once you have this file inside your document, do not delete it. Do not delete your files. Okay, so I'm going to type that in. Do not delete file for images, because the computer won't understand and it will only have the photocopy to figure out what has to be printed. So you never want to throw those away or you'll lose all of your data. Okay, I'm going to delete some of these things, and delete, there should be a delete button on your keyboard. If you're using a PC, we'll need to investigate where the delete button is. The other option is cut. Every time I cut, though, what's happening there is it's going to retain in the memory of the computer, which eventually could make the file a little bit slower because it's trying to remember all of these things. Cut will also mean that I could paste. So I could cut here and paste the same thing. But if I delete, it's gone. Okay. All right, so this image here, I would like, it's too big. Okay, so I know that I want this picture to be 4x6, and my content is lost. Where is it? Okay, so thinking in frames, it's not gone, it's just hiding. Kind of like a mask would be in Photoshop. So here I'm going to click on the white arrow just to show you that the content is still there. So if you notice, the frame here is blue, and then the frame of my content is over here is red. So I have stuff inside. So you can see that I can move with my white arrow, I can move the stuff that's inside. Now, one of the options would be just to crop it where I want it. But the other option would be, you know what, that's too big for what I'm looking for. I want to shrink that down. So I'm going to go back to my black arrow. I'm going to deselect somewhere. I'm going to click back on that, and then these icons should pop up, the fitting icons, okay? So one of the things that you want to remember is that proportional is very important, okay? So this first one is fill frame proportionally versus fill content proportionally. So depending on the dimensions of the content, it will change the size. So let's try the fit content proportionally. All right, so what that's doing is it's taking the whole entire file size and shrinking it, and you can see that some of it's white and some of it's not. I'm going to put a color behind this so that you can also see what it looks like. Okay, so notice that there's my frame, but my content is not the same proportion as my 4x6. So the other option is on the automated is fit frame proportionally. So there I can enlarge it automatically to fit the frame rather than the content. Now maybe I want to enlarge this a little bit more. I still have a little bit of room. I'm going to hold my shift key down to constrain my proportions. I'm going to show you what happens if I don't do it. Okay, I can squish and smush, and a lot of times, you know, that's not really the best thing. It looks unprofessional. It alters it too much. So I'm going to undo. Hold your shift key down, and it constrains the proportion. So here I can make this a little bit bigger, and then I can move it around with my hand tool. Okay, so those are fitting and sizing and scaling of my image. So you can see that my links, it's telling me I'm on page 1, it's telling me the title of it, and then on my pages you can see that it starts to give you a little bit of a preview. That and a lot of the other details are in drop-down menus. So here, let's go over here. Drop-down menu. Okay, there are panel options here. I can also duplicate my spread, I can delete the spread, I can insert pages, I can create a new master, which we'll do in a few minutes. I can change the page numbers, and then here's my panel options. So if I want to show those thumbnails, I can increase the size of them so I can see them a little bit bigger, okay, or smaller, right? Smaller. And it's going to activate it when I hit OK. And then the masters, you know, maybe I don't need to see that very much. And then which panel do you want on top? I don't know. I've always had masters on the top, and that's kind of annoying. So I'm going to switch to pages on top. And let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay. Now, the other way to navigate through these is there's little bars and lines, and you got to grab it. And move that down. Okay, so now you can see that that gave me a little bit bigger thumbnail. So that's an option. So just know that a lot of this is customizable. Now layers is also similar to Adobe Illustrator in that we're trying to make sandwiches. Don't use layers as often in InDesign, but it's helpful. For example, you might have the same content of typography, but maybe I have one layer is my English and the other layer is my French, right? So I'm going to go and Google Translate that, and then I'm going to copy it and paste it in the exact same spot, and then on my layer 2 I'll have my French or the different month or something like that. Okay. The other parts of the standard working space here, stroke, but again, it's up here. Okay. This does give you a little bit more options than what's up above. You can do arrows, which is pretty cool. Okay. Start and stop on your arrows. Swatches is your colors, and that's another conversation about colors, but a drop-down menu here, you can see that I can change my, organizing. This is my workspace flow, right? My management of things. I can create a new color, I can change the size of my swatches, and so forth. Okay. Gradients, and then effects and objects. Now these are things that I can show or not show. And if I have others under my window, maybe I want to show my text wrap, for example. I can drop that in or pull it out. Okay, so this is really intended to be a very comfortable, seamless workflow where you're popping things in, you're pulling stuff out, you're deleting them, you're using what you need, and then it hides. Same with my tabs here. So I can have multiple documents open. But what if I want to copy the page from here to here? Maybe there's some sort of content that I want to copy. So I'm going to pull this page palette out just so that I can show you. And let's try. I like to troubleshoot. Let's just try this first one here. And we're going to say copy. See how it won't copy. right? No copying. But if I click and drag, it gives me the no sign. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this separate, and I can change the size of it side by side, and using my key commands I can do that. Command 0 fits it in the window, right? Then I can go over here, I can pull this out. You don't always have to do that, but now this is how InDesign used to work. There would be a lot of documents and you could move them around, and they weren't attached to this workspace. So that was one of the so-called improvements that they did in the workspace. I'm still used to them being side by side. So, you know, if you want to buck the system and pull your files out of that organizing, you can do that. All right, so I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to take this, and now you can see that I can drag it over. Now the page sizes are different, and I'm just going to say OK. And I'm going to do it at the end. Okay. So now I have that document copied. So if you ever have to copy content that's not a template, just pop your files away from that tab system and you can copy them back and forth. Okay, and then that pops back in there. Let's see if it'll pop back up in there. That pops into the tab, and then this one again pops up into the tab. This is a newer thing with the Creative Cloud. The older versions of InDesign didn't do that. So, you know, if you work functionally like this, where you can tab through your documents, that's great. But if you know, anytime you need to, you can just pull that out. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, the next thing is I'm going to show you a different different master page. So I'm going to create a new master, and I'm going to use the B. Notice before I do that, when I look at these masters here, nope, it didn't bring the master page over. That's good. Sometimes it will bring the master page. It should bring the master page over. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a new master page. I can title it anything I want. Be master. I'm going to just say cover. And this means that it's side by side. Okay. Because I've changed my panel, everything's at the bottom. I'm going to change it back so it looks like what you're working on. Panel options. I'm just going to go back to the default. Okay. So again, if you're having a hard time seeing the lines and the little, you know, bars that the program is giving you, change the interface over here. That I think will help you because, you know, it's a little bit easier to see. So the B cover, I'm going to actually click on my master pages, which is where I'm at. It's blue, highlighted, and you can also see down here that I'm actually on my cover page. So one of the things that you have to be really careful about is creating content on your master page. So for example, I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to select all of these. If I accidentally, whoops, I'm going to cut it. If I accidentally start doing this on my master page, and I'm holding my shift key down, or my spacebar key to do the hand. If I do this, notice how it shows up on all of the master pages. Well, that's fun and dandy if I want that chicken on every single page, but I probably don't want to do that. So that's a big clue that you're on the wrong component. Okay. However, I'm going to go to the master page B so that I can show you how to make custom content here and how you can put it on different pages. So maybe this is, maybe on my B page, I want a yellow bar, and let's just make it all the way across. And maybe this is my logo that I want smaller. Okay, so I'm shrinking the box size with the black arrow, and then I'm going to go up here to my fit. Okay. And I don't want a stroke on this, so I'm going to say none. And then this is going to be my page number here, and I'm going to show you how to do that as well because I think that's fun. All right, so I'm going to format this for page number. I'm going to do it first as what type size, and I can just click in there and type, and maybe I want a different typeface, right? So I have all my options. Let's do this one weird one. And then notice how there's no content there. I'm going to just, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up to type. I'm going to insert a special character, and I'm going to insert my current page number. Okay, so that is the letter B. That is because I'm on a master page. So let me show you what happens when I click and drag this over here. Okay, notice that that changed from A to B, and then here's my content. Okay, so let's try it again. I'm just going to drag one more onto the left. I'm only doing it on the left because that's where I made my content. The other thing that I can do here is maybe on my B master, I want to change my margins and columns. Maybe I want a wider column and a wider margin and more columns. So under layout, I'm going to go to margins and columns, and here is where I can control this. The inside and the outside, the top and bottom, are linked together. If I know that I'm going to bind this in a certain way, that I need more space on the inside gutter where the pages fold together, then I need to control that margin a little bit more. So for example, maybe here, and it's only doing this on that page because notice how I have only one page selected. So in order for it to have both, I need to be selecting on both of them. But we're just going to work on the one on the left for now so you can see the difference, okay? And then my top and bottom aren't going to be controlled. So maybe my top is correct, but my outside I want to correspond with the edge of the chicken here. Okay. I'm going to make it a little bit different. There we go. I'm going to make it that way, just so that these are different numbers for you. And then the top, the bottom, I'm going to bring up just a little bit. And here I'm going to change my columns. 8 and 4 are basically the same thing, right? It's just divided a little bit more. But I can make my gutters smaller so that my content is connected. Okay, so that's just kind of for ruler, it's my underlying rulers. Click OK. Now, if I go to page 2, it's automatically changing my page number. Page 3, or page 4, sorry. These are even numbers, so page 4. Now, I'm going to show you that, let's see, are we looking at it? what you want to notice how this is a dotted line. Okay, that means I can't move it. It's locked. I cannot touch it. Anything that I put on a master page is going to be locked. I can't edit it. I can't move it. I can't change the words. I can't change the picture. It's going to be the same thing on every single page. So that is beneficial in some cases because it means that you don't have to copy and paste it, right? That's what the master pages are going to be utilized for. If I need to make changes to this, I go to my master page. So I'm going to go back to my master B, and notice here at the bottom, I'm in the B cover here. Maybe I want to change this to be white. Okay. And I'm going to change this to be a different color. Okay. And you can see that it's changing that in real time. There's my 2, there's my 4. Okay. So that's what master pages are great for, and you can make as many as you need, and those will, you can drag on top of them. So if I want to get rid of that and I want to go back to my A master, I just go back and do that. I click and drag on top of it. Okay, B cover. So let's review. The page numbers. You do not have to be on the master page for a page number to work. Let's look at it on this side. I'm going to create a type box here, and again, you have to remember that these are frames, so you have to draw a box to put something inside of it. I'm going to make it a big number, not a numerical number, but a point size. And I'm going to find a funky typeface. Let's see. Don't use that. I should delete a lot of my typefaces because I think I don't use most of these. They're just take up a lot of energy. No, that one's ugly. Franklin Gothic. Okay. Now, I'm also going to change my type color. Let's see what happens if I make it yellow. All right, so here I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on my master page, and I'm going to insert my special character here. Okay, type. Insert special character. It's markers. Current page number 3. All right, so we make this much bigger so you can just see it from all vantage points. Now what happens if I put a bunch of circles on this page and I'm holding my shift key down? Okay, so that's one way I'm drawing them all. They're different sizes. If I want to copy those, the easiest way is to click on them and nope, I'm on page 3. Yep. Click on these. There we go, page 3. So notice what was happening there. I was drawing on page 3, but it was selected, and I was trying to select my boxes here, my circles. I'm not sure if you noticed that, but that's a good way of troubleshooting, because you have to, instead of getting frustrated with the program, the answers might be right there in front of you. So what was happening was this down here said page 3, but this was not highlighted. The B cover was highlighted. So I was drawing on this, but for some reason I couldn't select what I was doing. Okay, so now I can select these, and when I move my mouse over this, and I'm on these. When I hit the option, notice how it creates a double arrow there. That's easier than copy and paste, saves you a few steps. Here is also where I could do my alignments. So maybe I'm going to align all of these on the center, and then all of these I'm going to align on the left. Okay, so notice this one's a little bit bigger, which is fine for this demonstration. Now what happens if I want to make this a page 9? So here I can maneuver all of my pages around. They're not static, they're not stuck in concrete. I can say, you know what, I'm changed my mind and I want this content to be later in my document. Or someone has told me that editing wise I need to move this to another page in my document. So when I click and drag on that, notice I have two options here. I can either go over or I can insert, right? So I'm going to insert here. And it put it on the left. And it changed my page number. Let's do that again. I'm going to drag it, and I really want it to be page 9. So there it made page 9. And page 3, where I'm still at, is blank. Now I can go to page 9, and my number, because I did an insert special character, has changed automatically for me. I love that about InDesign. Let's look at what other insert special character options you have. So you can do bullets, copyright symbol, ellipses, paragraph symbols. So all the under symbols. Markers is page numbers. It's gray because I don't have any type options right now. Hyphens and dashes. Again, this is a publication tool. So M dashes and N dashes, they're different sizes. Quotation marks is the biggest sign for whether someone is DIY or someone is designing the proper use of quotations rather than inch marks. And then others, tabs. I will talk to you about tabs and working with type in a different video because that's more complex. But I just wanted to give you an overview of kind of how the interface works, how I'm importing pictures, how I'm scaling, and how I'm using the pages. Okay, let's look now at the structure of the process book, for example. Now this is a student work and it is already started. So one of the things that I would critique about this is the use of the square and the size of the margins, right? And maybe using my grid a little bit more effectively. So let's try and see how that changes some of these things, okay? So I'm going to do a B master here, B master. I'm going to do B, and I'm going to say content or master, you know, it's up to you if you want to do that. Now notice that these are 8 by 8 images. Content. Okay, and on this page, I'm going to give myself a little bit more margin, or less margin, because it's such a small book. So first thing I'm going to do is margins and columns, and I'm going to change my inside, outside, and my gutter I'm going to make a little bit bigger because it's going to be a small book and I don't want too much in here. One of the considerations is, am I going to have to hole punch this? One of my first jobs, I made a catalog for my company and we needed to be able to hole punch these to put them in binders. So there's a dimension that you need to ask the printer what size that is, or look it up. It is definitely more, more than 1/4 of an inch. The other thing that I'm going to do here to help with organizing this layout is I'm going to give myself columns. And because this is small, I'm just going to show you that my 8 by 8 inch. If I do a lot of columns, all of a sudden my gutter starts to be almost the size of a column. It gets a little confusing. So if I do 12 columns, I could actually shrink that and make that an alignment thing, and I can force this here to be maybe 0.05. Okay, so there's defaults on things, and then you can control it. So don't let the computer, be so much of a determination. It's just a lot of defaulted components because it's a massive computer program. Okay, let's change the content here instead of to be A master to be the B. So I'm going to drag on top of it, and I'm going to change all of this to my B master. And notice that when I'm doing this, it switches from A to B. Okay. Okay, the other option here is apply master to pages. So it's kind of tedious to do that one at a time. So let's see what happens if I want to just do it for these. It looks like my student had maybe a master page that doesn't look like it's showing up on here with the crossbar here. So with my right mouse button, apply master to pages, and then I'm going to do my B content. So it's super efficient, right? Okay, let's go look at this for example. And this will show me if I toggle back and forth. So there's my preview and there's my working document. Okay, that's a lot of lines, but they're there for you for a purpose. Okay, so what ended up happening was in controlling this document, I have manipulated and taken away this header here, however it was formatted. So I feel like this header is a little bit too big, but I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go up to my B content, and I'm going to change back here, and I'm going to paste this. So remember, this is a square book, so maybe I just need a little bit less of a bar at the top. And going off the edges is called a bleed. And it looks like maybe there's some content there, so I can rotate this in my image to get that little swash in my picture, whatever it is. Okay. And now on my B pages, they're all there. So what's happening is I can see my words again. So when I added that information, that went away. So with my grids now, I can structure this a little bit better. Maybe instead of centering, I want to align this. So here's my copy, and maybe I'm going to align here with my grid. And I can move this over just a little bit more so that I'm aligned. That's what's so cool about this program, is being able to use the guides and get a little nerdy with it. These are not properly formatted. Okay, so what's happened here is it's not a tab, and I'm going to show you that there's a tab here. So because I want to make sure that I just cover this briefly, I'm going to show you this element as well. I can control these tabs, and I can see that they are not proper if I'm just using the dots, right? See how all of those are not aligned properly. And here I can go with my right mouse click, and I can do preview. So that's another way to do it if I'm in my type thing. So notice how all those are wonky. They're not aligned properly. I'm going to use my tab to do that. And my fine change, which is going to be fun. All right, the first thing is, let's give this a little bit more of an air. Space between the lines, which is called leading. And leading is actually really fun because it literally was metal pieces of lead when they developed mechanized printing. So when I'm on my type tool, I can select all and I can change that here. Just a quick note on formatting. Anytime you see a parentheses, that is the default. The computer is saying, that's the standard, right? Get rid of defaults. If you're going to design something, design it. Get rid of the default. Okay, so there's where I can change my space between the lines, or leading. And I'm going to do that visually. Sometimes it's better to do it visually than it is to think mechanically. All right, but now I need to fix this, so I'm making this so that I can see it better, right? That's way better than it being so tight before, right? Now I want to make this more aligned and be a little nerdy on this. So I need to select all of it, and I'm going to go to type, and I'm going to go to tabs. So notice that the key command here is Shift Command T. Shift Command T. And this window is going to pop up. This is really cool. So we can see that that's the end of my column right here. So notice that I'm off, right? There's my column. So if I really want to align, I can go like that. What I'm going to do is, here's all the different options. I have the left justified, a center, a right, and then this is align on something. And then I also have this thing called a leader, right? So maybe I'm going to do my right tab unless I have numbers. So if I have numbers, I can do my decimal. But for this, I'm just going to show you the right tab. So I'm going to click on that and click here. The X coordinate tells me where this is in my ruler. So I can go almost all the way or all the way to the edge, right? Notice how that changes there. If I want something on that, say I want those line dots, I can put that here, dot. I'm going to change it to like a tilde or something like that, just so you can see the difference between that. All right, so here's a tab, and it's doing the automated thing. If I don't want that, then I can delete this. Okay? Put hashtags or something. All right, so you can do all sorts of things. Now, notice how I changed that to exclamation marks, but it's still, when I click down in this other thing, it's still the tilde. That's because in order to make changes for the whole entire thing, I have to select all. Select all, and then click on that, and then make that the case. Okay? So let's try another tab here. Let's see. This is troubleshooting, right? Okay. Select all. Let's delete. Okay. And then select all, and then put what you want in there. Okay. Now, it's not changing it because this is not a tab. So what I want to do is copy this, and I'm going to do my fine change. This will be fun. under edit, sorry. Find change. Okay, so I'm going to do find, and I'm going to paste that, and then I'm going to change to a tab. So tab is a little caret and a T. Whoops, a lowercase t. Find next. Sorry, don't select it in order for it to work. Find next. Change. Find next. Change. Okay, change all. So you'll notice that what's happening here is I had a certain number of dots and then it only replaced that amount of dots. So that's where, you know, you would prefer that people don't give you formatted type. So now I'm just going to go through and select these things and then hit my tab. But that find change is a really cool technique that allows you to do all sorts of things. For example, if someone sends you a document and it has lots of tabs, and that's caret is I think a 6. Maybe they have 3 tabs and you only want 1. So it's really beneficial for that. All right, we'll close that out. Okay, well, I can't really read that. I was only making the exclamation marks just for visual reference. So I'm just going to select all of these and delete the tab leader. Okay. All right, so one of the other things when you're working on this is creating your layout to be efficient on the grid. And we'll wrap things up here in a second. All right, so notice that this B, if I delete this, there's my stuff underneath, right? So this is not on my B master. This is on my B master. This header here, I made it smaller. So I'm just going to delete what's there, and then I'm going to look at my content. So the grid is almost being used, you know, hand-eye coordination. Maybe I want to, you know, enlarge some of this content. Don't be afraid to use your space again, right? So here, and then if I want to edit this, I can go to my links palette, and I can also do my drop-down menu here, and I can edit original, edit with. So for example, this is a little dark, so if I want to go and edit it in Photoshop, it'll automatically link back and forth to it. Okay, so you can move your boxes around, and then, you know, maybe on the B page, I'm going to add my numbers, right, my page numbers. Okay, so that's going to give you the content, and then the last thing I want to show you is the exporting to a PDF. So when we started this, I talked about this being facing pages or not facing pages. Here's a none page, right? So the default is the facing pages, and that's how we want to export it if we're designing it that way. The next step in this would be to save this file as a PDF so that someone can read it. I'm going to go to File, and I want to save it, or I want to save as. So saving as is always good if you're doing different versions, or you're not sure if you want to come back to it, or you know, you've got a you know, a template versus, you know, you're just changing the subject matter or the pictures or the month or whatever it might be. Okay, so save as. But export is creating a preview document. That's what PDF is. It's a preview document. So I'm going to say process book example. You change the name of it, and down here, this is what you want to look at. Down here, Adobe PDF. Okay. So when I click save, this is the important stuff. This is where we want to work on this. Now, if I don't need it as spreads, it's defaulted as pages. So if I'm working in a spread document, but that's not the point of, what I'm really care about, then, it'll do it individual. So we're going to do both just so we can see the examples. The other thing here that you want to probably click on is viewing the PDF after exporting. Default in these cases I think is really beneficial. There's not really anything else that you need. You probably don't want to do visible guides and grids on things that a customer, a layman is going to be, viewing. So don't worry about that. If you have a document that you only need to show certain pages, this is where you do the range. This is also good if you have sections or, you want to do a spread at a time. Or if the page numbers are, different. So maybe I have a proposal set up and I'm doing, pages 1 through 8 is something. And then page 9 through 20 is the second part of my presentation. And I want to separate those slides. All right, so we're going to do pages exported first. Oh yeah, and here is create separate PDF files if you want to make them separated. All right, so I'm just going to export and let it do its business. It's working. I know that this has been a long video, but thanks for sticking with me. I think that learning the tools, if you understand the workflow and the workspace and the rationale behind how the program works, and that it's really designed to be user-friendly. It's not trying to confuse you. It's just learning how to drive in a way that maybe you've been using different programs before, and it's just kind of understanding where all of the gears are in your car. Okay, and now I'm going to export spreads. Okay, and here I'm going to do spreads. And it should open up. Let's see what happens. If you have questions for me, there's ways to get in touch with me. You make a comment. All right, so all right, let's look at both of these. All right. Now, there's a clue at the top, 1 through 18, 1 through 34. So 1 through 34 is going to be my book as one page at a time. Okay. So that means that I could design my document in a facing pages working environment, but I can export it as a single page. However, if I've designed it as a spread, it might look weird. If I'm doing it this way, it might look like a mistake. So see how the words are alternating? That's a little bizarre, right? Or if my page numbers are on the different sides. So here's the example of this as spreads. Spreads are really awesome. So you can see content together the way it was designed. Now, some of the things that I would do on this is add my page numbers, right? Because I have page numbers in my table of contents, but then I don't have page numbers yet on my document. I'd also go in and clean up my pictures. I would go into Photoshop and edit these, the image adjustment, brightness, contrast, just to clear these up so they're a little bit more legible. And maybe I'm going to play around with, some more content. So in the process book that you're designing, you want to give me content, right? You want clarity of information. What is the rationale? Why did you sketch these? Why did you make the decisions that you made? So that's the next step of the content here. So here's an example, but this type of explanation should be everywhere. Okay? All right, good luck. One of your projects is going to be the process book, and one of them is the brand manual. So you're going to see the examples of the brand manual, and you can structure that. A couple of things to remember when we go to InDesign here. This, if you're doing a book, so say you're going to upload it to Blurb, or it's a actual finished document. It needs to be increments of 4 pages. So this is incorrect, 32 to 34. It needs to be increments of 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and that's because of how the print production is. And then there will be a 4 pages of cover. So technically, page 1 and page 2 here would be on my cover, and then 3 through 32 would be the content, and then this last page and that they would be printed separately. So it depends on where you're producing your document that you need to worry about that. If this is going to be what's called a self cover, then it's going to be included in here. So technically there would be 32 plus 4, so this should be 36 pages instead for the proper quantity of pages for production purposes. Now, if I'm doing a PDF and it's not going anywhere, it's not going to be physically printed, and it's just a document to share, by all means, it can be any number of pages. And you don't need to worry about those content limitations and structures of the rules for physically printing your document. Okay, good luck.